there. Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com, and this is Goulet Q&A episode number 91. And this one's just a little bit special here because I have a special guest joining me here today. Come on over. This is the special Brian G ×2 edition of Goulet Q&A. This is Brian Gray.
Mr. Goulet, how are you doing?
Yes, thank you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me in.
Yeah, this is Brian Gray of Edison Pens. We've had a collaboration together for years. Talked a lot about Edison. Go ahead.
Seriously,
go ahead,
we've been tight friends since the very beginning of both of our businesses, really.
Yeah, basically.
Edison and Goulet go way back. Before Edison had a production line, these guys contacted us and say, hey, we'd like to sell some of your pens. And we thought, you know what, I don't know. We kind of like having direct sales. We kind of like doing everything custom. But we're growing, and maybe we could do something like that. So these guys were our first retailer ever. And it's been a very symbiotic, wonderful relationship from the get-go. Yeah. And it's always been late-night phone calls that we've had over and over and over about business strategy, about, you know, what some good things are to happen in the fountain pen community. It's really been great. So,
it's like girl talk with the landline phone.
There
and
you
have
go.
The socks on, and we're waking up dreaming about pen models and stuff like that. You know,
we twirl our short hair.
Yeah, talked about who noticed us at the pen show.
Yeah.
No, but no, it has worked out really well. Clearly, those of you who've been following kind of both of our businesses for a number of years, you've seen that collaboration really work out well. And this is actually the first time that you've been to our place here.
Well, you know, honestly, we're in Ohio, you're in Virginia. We only get to meet maybe once a year, usually at the DC Pen Show, and we don't get to socialize nearly as often as what we would like.
No.
So this year we decided to go to the DC Pen Show a day early. We got in last night, we drove down to this beautiful facility that we haven't had a tour of yet, but I can't wait. It's an excellent setup from what I can tell so far.
Yeah.
So and much larger than what I thought. But
I knew it seemed big to you, but
yeah.
He hasn't even gotten the full tour yet because honestly, they got here and I was like, okay, we're gonna be having lunch and we got to shoot the Q&A so that Jenny has time to edit it, and we're like trying to get over, and he's like meeting people in the bathroom, and I'm like, oh, we got to shoot this video. So we're gonna spend a lot of time this afternoon doing some stuff. We'll do some cool periscopes, which you'll have already seen at this time that this video actually publishes.
Yes, precisely.
Which we just got on the Periscope. We'll talk about all this kind of stuff. But so basically the theme that's going on for this week, normally I just kind of take all kinds of random questions and all that, but we focused it purely on Edison pens.
Sure.
Obviously, since we have...
And I appreciate it.
That going on. Absolutely. So we got a bunch of good questions that came in, some from the blog, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. So I got all the questions right here, Brian, so we'll just kind of go ahead
jump into it
and kick it off. So the first question that we have is from Miss Fountain Pen that came in from our blog. And Miss Fountain Pen asks, back on December 1st of 2014, Brian of Edison posted on his blog that the Hudson was being discontinued and added, in the meantime, fear not, we plan on having a new pen model appear in the production line.
I like how she directly quoted me. You know, it's like, I'm on the spot now. Yeah. Direct quote.
To replace it early 2015.
Did I say that?
Well, it's a quote. It's a quote, man. Yeah. So is the new pen model still in the cards, or has he given up on it?
No, we have not given up on it. Typically, I will admit that there are times where I think that we probably overestimate our timelines, where we think, okay, this pen is ready, we have the materials picked out, the pen is coming, but it's one of those deals where it's very difficult, honestly, for us to predict our production schedule. We get this project going, we get this project going, we get this project going, and then all these things kind of get put on the back burner. There's something new coming in probably about, I'm going to say, actually, we might be announcing it next week. That's not the pen that she's referring to, but it's something that will be exciting. This guy knows, but he can't say anything, and neither can I.
I don't know, don't ask me.
Yeah.
Don't ask me.
So the answer is, and I hope that other pen companies are guilty of this too. I hope I'm not the only one.
You are. Trust me.
No, really. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes I will admit that I really think we're going to launch this in the next month or two, and then it turns out to be 6 months. So I do apologize.
That never happens. I got to say, you're like the only one.
Come on now. Doesn't Twisty do that a lot too? Yeah.
Everybody. Everything always gets pushed back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
So the answer to that is yes, and I apologize. It is coming though.
So I have a kind of a follow-up question for you on that. So you have your production line of pens, which is what Miss Fountain Pen's asking about here, but you also take custom orders and stuff.
Yeah.
You do pen shows.
Yeah.
How much does I'm just genuinely interested in this myself. How much does custom orders like how much does that affect your production schedule? Because that's kind of gonna ebb and flow, right?
No, not necessarily, because the custom orders come in and we allot so many pens per week that we can do for the custom orders. So that stays constant. And then because of that, we have a backlog. Right now we're backlogged about 9 weeks. In the summer earlier, we were backlogged 12 weeks.
Wow.
Now, yeah, well, which, it's a good thing. And someday I'll probably put out a video blog of my own to discuss that longer wait and why we prefer to have that longer wait. And if you guys don't mind waiting, that's all part of it too. Now, of course, if people don't want to wait, we have usually around 250 pens for the signature line that are inventoried and ready to ship. Okay. They're set to go out. Gotcha. So usually if you're jonesing for a pump filler, a pneumatic filler, something more exotic from our offerings, you can find one that's usually going to be exactly what you want. And if not, gotcha, then we might have a longer wait. So the answer to that question is the signature line stays pretty constant because we won't allow it. We won't like double book a week, because if we do that, then we can't keep up on other projects.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so we just keep that backlog we keep the rate that we can do them consistent, and then we just backlog things as we need to.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing about that. All right. This one is from Calligraphy Nut that came in through our blog. Let's see here. It would be interesting to hear both of your insights on the pen hobby market and where you each see potential growth for your companies. Like, would Brian consider doing dip pens? I know you've mentioned a few thoughts on growth before. It would just be interesting to hear.
That actually kind of segues me from my comment earlier when I said someday I'll probably do a video blog about us growing, or whether or not we would take on more, and we're kind of happy with the way things are. So right now we have 4 employees. There's 4 of us full-time, and there's 2 that come every so often part-time. And we're at a crossroads right now where we want to decide, do we want to keep growing? And I think the answer is, and not to get too philosophical, but we don't need to make a little more money or even a lot more money to be happier. You know what I mean? And the bottom line is that we are like very, very happy the way things are. We love the business, we love our customers, we like innovating new designs and new filling systems. And if we got into a position to where, I'm really confident that within 2 years, we could probably triple the machines that we have running and probably triple the employees. But you know what? I'm afraid that then I would no longer be a pen maker. I would be a manager of people, and my hands wouldn't be in the products. And right now, every pen that leaves our facility, the final QC, and most of the manufacturing as well, is done by my wife, who's sitting over here, by the way. She didn't want to be on camera. Maybe we'll chase her over here in a little bit. My wife or myself, we have the final QC on every pen that goes out, be it production line, be it signature line. Any pen that comes out of Edison is us doing the final test, the final QC, checking the nib, make sure that everything is perfect. If we keep growing, then I don't know that I would still retain that. Now, of course, we could hire great people to do it, but you know what? I kind of like the way things are. So the plan for us right now is probably to kind of stay where we are. If people don't mind waiting 8, 9, maybe 12 weeks sometimes for a custom pen, we don't mind either. And so far, we don't get a lot of pushback on our long wait, So I think that answered the question. Let me go back and make sure
I think so, yeah. It was just kind of a general question.
General question about growth for the companies.
Because because for you it's not just like that kind of stuff, but you would need a bigger facility. So you're talking about moving locations and all kind of stuff. And we've talked about that a little bit because we have gone through that. Rachel and I did. Yep. Ours is a little different because we're not in manufacturing nearly as heavily. So ours is a very different. But we went through that. We started out with the business in our house, and then we took it off-site to a facility, and now we've expanded to what you're seeing here now.
Yeah.
I can very much attest to the fact that when you have, upwards of 30 people and a facility that's this large, a lot of your time is spent doing things other than what you started out doing.
Well, I will say this though, my fear of growth, of hiring a lot more and getting more machines, is losing the feeling of happiness every day when I go in. You know what I mean? I don't think you've lost that though. I can tell, just visiting you and talking to you, you've managed to keep that. So I'm going to pick his brain if we do decide to grow more as to how he's managed to do that. So kudos to you, absolutely.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. But I think ultimately, most anybody can relate to this, whether you're in the pen business or whatever it is that you do. It's really a matter of what makes you happy.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
what are your goals, and are you achieving that? Whether you're small or huge, are you happy?
and we are, and it ain't broke. So maybe
There you
maybe we're not going to mess with
There
it.
you go. But you're still a young guy, you know. You still got, not quite as young as me.
He teases me all the time. I'm 42, and you're what, like 22, I think?
31.
Oh,
Thank you
wow.
very much.
Yeah.
My son is going into kindergarten this year, so I've got, I've got some notches on my belt. But yeah, it was funnier, what was it, like last year or 2 years ago when you hit your 40s and I was still in my 20s. That was the best.
No,
I
that was
really
depressing.
enjoyed that.
That was
phase.
depressing for me.
But to be fair, though, we look almost about the same age.
You think so?
I've aged a bit. My eyes are bagging, and
I'm starting to get a little gray on the sides.
Starting to be a little.
Seriously,
gray.
like I just got a haircut, and if you look at, I'm not joking. If you look at the video blog that we did before the DC Pen Show, you'll see my gray because my wife had not cut my hair yet. And then on the Periscope session, it's like the Periscope session published before the YouTube video, of course. So I've got extremely short hair in the Periscope session, and then I've got long hair, and not long, but totally different. So anyways, my point is though, the gray hair shows if I let it grow, so I'm always telling my wife to cut my hair, I want.
There you go. And see, I'm like waiting for the grays to come in. I'm excited about that. Because my dad went gray really, really young. So he was like silver fox, like had full head of white hair, basically ever since I was a kid.
The only thing that bugs me though is you'll see that like every so often there's one that's just like this wiry, nasty renegade that just sticks right out. It's like, oh man, I gotta get rid of that one.
As long as it's coming out of your head, not your ears, then you're okay, right?
That's another story. That's another problem. Don't worry, man. That'll happen too.
Oh my goodness. That's kind of cool. I just realized like your last name is Gray, so when you go Gray, maybe you can do something with that.
Yeah, there we go.
Gray or whatever. I don't know. So okay, that was very, very long answer. Oh well, I didn't even address my part, but basically, I'm obviously been growing a lot, and I'm up for more growth. I'm not pursuing it aggressively. Like for us, it's kind of been like you guys. You haven't like aggressively pursued growth as the end goal. Like you didn't start turning pens in your garage saying, oh yeah, like with the wood pens back in the day. You didn't be like, oh yeah, this is totally going to be like my full-time gig that I could pass on to my kids one day. Like,
actually this is totally not a different topic, but getting away from the questions. When I started making pens, it was just for fun, and it was just a lathe in my garage. And then I started making some pens, and I put them up on the forums, and people were like, I'd buy that, I'd buy that, I'd buy that. And then right about the time that pens were starting to kind of show a little bit of income is when I went through the third layoff in 3 years with my old job when I did pharmaceutical sales. And even when I lost the job the third time, what I did basically is I just went into the garage and I was making pens just to stay off of unemployment. I never really thought it would be a living. And the next thing it's like, Andrea, I sold another one. And it's like, I sold another one. And it's like, you know what? We're going to pay our mortgage this month. And we're going to pay our bills this month. The first 4 or 5 months were a struggle. But, I just stopped interviewing, which was wonderful. I mean, I never, ever thought this would be a full-time business with employees, with, distributors, with retailers. It was never something that I thought would happen. If you would have said to me 8 years ago, this is where you'd be, I'd be like, oh come on, I'm still gonna have that crappy drug job. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Still be pushing drugs out there.
Yeah. Well,
now you're just pushing pens, which is basically like drugs to fountain pen people. But
that's true. Yeah, addictive.
Yeah. A little safer, at least, I would like.
I would think so. Yeah.
But that's cool. Yeah. So I mean, similar kind of thing. Like we got such a similar backstory. We could go on for hours just talking about this. But yeah, it's the same kind of thing. We had a much more like intentional like do or die kind of situation because Rachel, it was geared around our son. So like our son was born. Rachel went on maternity leave from her company and was like, I can't go back. And I was like, okay, we don't have income to pay our mortgage. We've got this many months to try to make it work.
Yeah.
We got to go all in, do or die, and then by this time we got to figure something else out if this doesn't work.
I will say this though, after doing the interviews, like when I lost the job and when I was trying to get back into it, I quickly realized it was more do or die than what I thought because I was overqualified. My salary that I had before was much larger than what they really wanted to pay then, and I would have taken a pay cut. But I realized quickly that look, I was in that industry for 14 years, and I succeeded pretty well in it. and trying to get back into it with that much experience when they're usually hiring people out of college, it became do or die kind of quick. And I realized that fast. Thank goodness it was like, hey, we're paying the bills right around the time that I realized this is probably the way I better go.
Nice.
You know, because I don't know that I'm getting back into that industry. Yeah.
So there you go. If you get laid off, you should start your own pen company.
Pen company.
Right?
Yep.
100% success rate right here. Cool. All right, we got more questions, so we'll keep on trucking along. This one is from Tom J. from our blog. It said, ask Brian Gray, what's his favorite fountain pen filling mechanism?
That we make or just in general?
That's the question. I think you can interpret it however you would like to answer it.
The filling mechanism that we've made that I'm most proud of is the pneumatic filler, because that was truly kind of an engineering feat. I took inspiration from a second generation Chilton. I improved upon how they engineered it, and I kind of, you know, just made improvements that I feel made it a much better filling pen. And it was a lot of engineering. A lot went into it. My favorite to use is probably our pump filler, and the reason for that is especially the pump fillers with the translucent barrels, because when you fill them, you can watch the ink splash up into the.
That is very cool.
That's really neat. Favorite filling system outside of ours, and boy, I'd love to make one someday, but man, that would be way beyond the pneumatic. You might have to Google this, and you might have to look around. It's called a Ford filler, and it's really, really interesting. It's basically like it's kind of like a pen that fills as a piston filler, but the ink can pass through the piston itself to utilize the entire reservoir. So when you draw it back, all the ink goes up, and when you draw it forward, the ink stays in.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. It's also, there's some kind of funky valve in there that I don't fully understand yet, but it's really, really, and they're very difficult to find. Our friend Eric Schneider has one. We'll have to see if he can post pictures of it someday.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's a very, very cool pen. Google Ford filler, find all the information that you want on it, and if anybody can explain that valve to me, shoot me an email. You know, that might help us make one someday.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
If you teach him how to make it, he'll give you one for free. How about that?
I would do that. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
There you go. Incentivize people.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, this is another question from Tom J. It was really good. So, of Edison's pneumatic pump fill and bulb fill fountain pens, can the sacks be replaced on any of them by the user, or do they have to be returned to you?
Yeah, totally depends on your personal pen repair skills. Resacking pens is usually pretty. You've resacked some pens, haven't you?
I haven't really messed that much with it. No, I haven't.
Generally, it's easy. I mean, essentially, you just remove the old sack, make sure that whatever's inside is cleaned up. If it was melted, if it was deteriorated, or something was wrong with it, and then rough up the attachment to where the sack goes. Apply shellac, put it on there. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not. There's probably some more details than that I'm not mentioning, but be sure to just go to YouTube and say how to resack a pen. It's really that simple.
I was gonna say, like, this is a common thing, well, especially with a lot of vintage pens. Like, hey, vintage pens add sacks, and so pretty much anybody that's into vintage pens, that's like, from what I hear, that's one of the first things they learn how to do is how to resack pens.
So the bulb filler, very easy. You pop it off, do exactly what I said with shellac, and then put the bulb back on. If you don't know what size sack it is, it's a number 18. So you can go out and get a number 18 sack, and there you are. The pneumatic filler is also just as easy, except we do seal the section with shellac. So all you have to do is heat the section, just like any vintage pen would that has the same, shellac seal, pop it off and replace the sack. Now the pump filler, most people understand that that's inspired by the Vacuumatic, and it's the same concept of the Vacuumatic. And we made a very, I think, smart decision when we engineered that. We made the threads on the back of the pump mechanism identical to what Parker used on the Vacuumatic. So as long as you can replace a diaphragm on a Parker Vacuumatic and you have the tool to do it, then you can do the same thing to our pens. We figure that long term, I don't want those threads to be proprietary so that people have to always come back to me for the repair. No big deal. Why would I really want to capitalize on that? I usually don't charge much for repairs anyways. Actually, if something goes wrong with the pen, we rarely charge anything for repair. Just send it back and we fix it and send it back to you. So I purposely left it that way so that, I don't know, let's say 30 years from now, the Edison Pen Company is no longer around. Not a problem at all. All of these pens can be serviced by, most times at home for a simple resacking. If you're not familiar with replacing the diaphragm on a Vacuumatic, YouTube videos, and you just got to buy the wrench. That's basically it. Or if you don't feel good about doing that, then any pen repair person that works on Vacuumatics can repair that pump filler just as easily.
Cool.
Yep.
And if you have no idea what he's talking about right now, you probably shouldn't try doing it until you Google some of these things and watch some
I would
YouTube
recommend
videos,
that.
right?
Yeah. Or
exactly.
Email us and we can walk you through it as well. Yeah.
There you go. Awesome. Thank you, man.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this one's from Ryan G on Facebook.
All right.
Close, Ryan. You know, still honorary mention for your name there. But is there a chance you might offer a production line pen in ebonite?
Mm-hmm.
I have a pearl in ebonite and it's awesome. It would be great to see more high quality pens readily available in ebonite.
We do that, but it's usually a limited edition. You remember that we did probably 3 premieres out of ebonite, or
we have
2?
done 3, yeah. We did the blue one first. It was like the first year that we did it.
Yeah.
And just did a handful, and they sold immediately. The
Yep.
blue and black ones, I forget what we even called it. I think.
They're probably in here, aren't
Yeah,
they?
I've got them all in there. Yeah, you can whip them out.
1,
They're there.
2, 3, yeah.
Well, and technically we had kind of a 4th because the third material kind of changed on us. You remember that one?
These are the premieres that we did for the Goulets out of ebonite that turned out great.
Yeah. So the first one was a blue and black, and then we did the cherry cordial, which was
Is that
red
even
and black.
visible up there?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
should hold them up.
Yeah,
but,
you're good.
Yep.
And then this one, this was actually that's what it.
That was the material debacle.
Macassar. Yeah, the Macassar. So it ended up shifting color, almost reversed in color.
Yeah.
By the time we actually
Yeah.
Got it out.
But. So the answer is yes, and it does happen, but it's usually limited editions because number one, ebonite is a bit of a more limited material period. It's also a bit more expensive. So you'll notice that like usually if we do a limited edition pen out of ebonite, it's usually going to be $200 or less. Is that what we charge for the premieres?
We charge $200 for those.
$200 for the premieres.
So but normally it's about $149. So.
Ebonite is a lot more expensive than acrylic. So it doesn't always lend itself to a production setting for us unless it's a limited edition, maybe with a little bit more price added to it to cover our material costs.
For those who don't know what ebonite is, can you explain in like 30 seconds? Like what is ebonite and why does it cost, like why would you pay $50 more for an ebonite pen?
Ebonite is a vulcanized rubber, and essentially the reason that we still use it in pens, in my opinion, I mean someone could correct me on this, the reason that we still use it in pens is that it's a bit of a throwback to vintage. In the pre-Depression era, when fountain pens started to come out as self-filling fountain pens, you know, the Waterman eyedroppers and the vintage pens, there was no such thing as modern plastics. So they had to make pens out of either celluloid or they had to find another material, and a very common material was called, back then, I believe they just called it hard rubber, and then Goodyear, actually, literally the Goodyear company, they specialize in rubber, obviously. They trademarked it as vulcanite. Now, don't quote me, I'm going off of memory, but they called it vulcanite, and then a lot of people call it ebonite because ebonite was used in bowling balls, and that company trademarked the ebonite term. Now, again, I might be off on a little bit of that, but the bottom line is that ebonite is a bit of a throwback to vintage because back then there wasn't much else to make materials. There weren't good modern plastics to make them out of. And a lot of people still like it today because on a microscopic level, it probably does have a little bit more give, a little bit more warmth. The word that I like to use is that ebonite feels a little more organic to me.
Ooh.
Is that good?
It's a good word.
I think so.
It's a good word.
You know, so a lot of people love it. There are limitations though. I mean, basically ebonite needs to either be a solid color or it needs to be, it's extruded instead of cast. So just like your Play-Doh machine that extrudes Play-Doh out the front, that's how you make ebonite. So because of that, you're limited into what the patterns can kind of look like. Not too limited, they're still great, but the patterns are totally different than what you get from a cast acrylic sheet, where it's literally a sheet that is laid out and then cast, and you can put your patterns in that way. Cast versus extruded makes different materials and different patterns. And in the case of ebonite, I feel it's a little bit more organic. But then a lot of people, if you don't know, a lot of people should be aware, it can be susceptible to UV rays. So don't take your ebonite pen to the beach. Don't take your ebonite pen out, you know, for prolonged sunlight. Really, any pen shouldn't see prolonged sunlight, but ebonite will fade when it gets into UV rays.
Yeah, because it's a more natural material.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, 10 minutes of sunlight won't kill your pen.
Right.
But if you left it outside all day, you would probably notice a big fading going on in the pen.
Interesting. Okay, that's good to know.
Yep. Sorry, didn't you say 30 seconds on that answer?
I did. I didn't time you though. I mean, Yeah, I have no concept of time. So you turn the camera on and I just talk. You
Mm-hmm.
know, anybody can know that. Yeah, my quick look videos are like 6 minutes, so
Yeah.
go figure. Okay, let's see here. Okay, this is a good one from Katherine B. On Facebook. Will the Fireball be available at the DC Pen Show? So this is the summer edition for 2015, the premiere, which is our exclusive Edison Pen.
The Fireball premiere.
Yes. So you guys are going to the DC show. Literally,
Yep.
you'll be there. Are you actually going to be at the show tomorrow, like when this video launches for Friday, or are you starting on Saturday?
Actually, when will this publish? Like
This will publish like midday Friday. Yeah.
We will be at the DC Pen Show selling pens when you're watching this. Yep.
Cool.
So
there you go.
Yeah. The answer to that is no. I'm sorry. Now keep in mind that there's the difference between our signature line and our production line, and the Fireball pen falls into our production line. Is that we don't sell them. What we do, the quality between the two pens are no different, but because we do them production line style, because we don't offer customizations, and we do them like an assembly line, and then retailers like these guys make distribution go way up, then volume goes up, price goes down. But we cannot sell them. That's the agreement that we have with our retailers. Just like any other
directly to the customer.
Exactly.
For the signature line.
Just like any manufacturer who wholesales to retailers, you can't sell direct to the public, and we can't do that tomorrow with the Fireball. If Brian wants to bring some in his shirt and he wants to sell them when he's visiting at the show, then
or
you're
a
welcome.
trench coat, you know.
Yeah.
Or a fishing vest, like that's very popular at the pen shows. You know, everybody has their fishing vest and they all stick their pens all everywhere. You know,
that works.
It's not an uncommon sight. If you've never been to a pen show, it's quite a sight to behold.
Now we will have some custom-made premieres, but also which can be purchased at the show, but don't expect that $149 price. It would still be the same as our signature line pens because number one, we make them one at a time as opposed to production style, and number two, we can't compete with our retailers' pricing. They certainly wouldn't appreciate that. Yeah. So premieres will be there, not Fireball, and not the $149 price. It'll be the same as the rest of our custom line because they are custom premieres.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks for explaining that. Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, let's see here. Next question. This is from Eric B. on Facebook. Will there ever be a true celluloid pen in the production line? We'll start with that, and then we got some follow-up questions.
Eric, if you want to finance the material, okay, here's the problem. Now, we can get celluloid. But I'm not exaggerating. If we get celluloid, we're going to have a minimum of like 4 metric tons. I'm not joking. So a small company like ours, and a company that relies on having lots of variety in our materials, celluloid doesn't come to us unless it's going through a distributor. And that just doesn't exist anywhere right now. It used to be American Art Plastics had celluloid, but they stopped selling that. So we used to have some celluloid pens through them. But for an operation like ours, the answer is, if I did get 4 metric tons of celluloid, I'm sure it would sell well, but that would be one material, one pattern, and then,
just for reference, like how many pens would you have to make out of 4 metric tons? I'm trying to conceive what that would even be.
It would be like
a ballpark.
Yeah, it would be like a mountain of, like I have no idea. I have no clue what that would really turn into. Usually when we do our yields, we don't base it on weight. We base it on meters. Yeah. So I have no idea what that weight would be.
So it's basically like a whole other class of manufacturing, if you will.
A company like Visconti can buy 2, 3, 4 metric tons of celluloid. We can't. And it's just that simple. And then when companies do commission that, they're never going to sell it to anybody else. You know what I mean? They're never going to let us use it. They're never going to put it on a secondary market. Yeah. There was one time where Tibaldi had 3 or 4 materials, and they did sell it, and it went out to the secondary market, and it was on European eBay and eBay here and there, and it's all gone. And that was scrounged up really, really fast.
Interesting.
Yeah. So nothing celluloid from us. I will tell you this though, if you go on eBay and you find some celluloid and you send it to us, then absolutely. And we don't do that frequently, but whenever someone finds a piece, a lot of times they send it to us to make a pen, and that's great.
I
love doing
that's
that.
one of the things I've seen at pen shows. Sometimes people have rods
that
hold like Schaefer celluloid and stuff like that.
Go to the DC Pen Show. I guarantee there'd probably be a couple of raw rods of celluloid here and there. Snatch it up, come to our table, and we'll make a pen for you.
Expensive though.
Yeah,
very expensive.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, I mean, you might pay, what, like $100 for a rod, just raw material or something, like at a pen show or something, you know? I'm going off memory from years ago.
I would say enough to make one pen would be between 40 and 100, depending upon how rare it is, and the guy who owns it is going to know how rare it is too, and he's probably going to price it accordingly.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
So the material alone, you know, it's you know, almost half the cost of the pen coming from us anyways, so yeah.
So let me ask you a follow-up question, just like I did with the ebonite earlier. What is so special about celluloid? Why would somebody pay $100 for a rod of celluloid before it's even made into a pen?
You know, celluloid is often considered like the king of pen materials, but I'll give you my personal opinion. Celluloid is great. It takes a wonderful polish. Interestingly, it's quite flammable. So, like, if you have these celluloid shavings, well, I don't know if anyone, the movie Inglourious Basterds, did you ever see that?
Yes.
At the end, the celluloid fire, they were not exaggerating how big that fire was. When celluloid goes up, it is crazy. It is crazy volatile. So it's, I mean, that's not a big deal because we do our production with coolant, so no spark would happen inside those machines. But my manual lathe, anytime that I'm turning metal, after I've turned celluloid, I have to clean it out thoroughly because red hot swarf of metal can come down and create a problem.
Wow.
So anyways, that I kind of got off topic there with the whole flammability issue. But my personal opinion, there's so many great acrylics out there that I personally would not get so caught up on I have to have this custom celluloid pen. If you find it and it's a great pen, buy it and do that. But don't think that your Grail pen has to be, for some reason, something crazy celluloid.
There's like a law of diminishing returns. Like you're paying a super premium for just that little bit of a different kind of material.
Well, you know, if you want something that's unique and cool and not too many other people have, at least custom from us. Because you realize that, I mean, you can get a celluloid Visconti pen. You can get a celluloid pen from Omas. You can get, you know, lots of companies have it.
They're expensive.
Yes.
I mean, you're paying $800,000 or some $800 to $1,000 for like a nice celluloid pen.
Yeah, yeah.
Or like Delta, you know, for their Dolce Vita, you know, like the orange and black. Like that's celluloid, but you're paying, you know,
I put it to this way.
$800.
I put it to this way. If I'm going to go back to my shop and make my Grail pen for me, I'm really not going to reach for celluloid. First of all, we don't have any, but even if I had the most beautiful celluloid there, I'd be kind of like, yeah, you know, not a big deal. I've got all these acrylics that have, you know, so much, like if you go to our website and look through our material samples gallery and all the materials that we can get, I'm not joking. There's got to be 800 to 1,000 different acrylics that we can use. And something in there is going to be stunning for you, I promise. You know what I mean? So me personally, and of course, people might have a very different opinion than this, and that's great, because celluloid has always been called the king of pen materials. You know, the shine, the feel, I don't think it's that far off from acrylic. At least, you know, the way that we prepare acrylic, you know.
It's not, especially if you're looking at them in pictures, unless the pattern is different, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two.
And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is that celluloid made for pen applications is much thicker than what most celluloid manufacturers make. And it literally takes anywhere from a year to 3 years to cure. So that's the next obstacle. If we, you know, a big huge sheet that's 3/4 thick, if I ordered it today, we wouldn't even have it for probably 2, 3, 4 years because it needs to cure. It takes that long to cure. So it's, you know, it's prohibitive for us. And there's so many great acrylics out there. I'm not going to poo-poo on celluloid, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's a great pen
material. But it shouldn't be built up into like, if you know, I have to have celluloid kind of thing in order to be like a true fountain pen enthusiast.
I don't think so. The acrylics that are out there are just stunning today. They're great. So, and that's my opinion. People will differ, I'm sure.
So I want to follow up on one thing, because you said something about it being flammable and stuff like that, but we're totally like deviating a little bit from the question. That's okay. But like, is this pen gonna, like, if you leave it out in the sun, is it gonna like literally burst into flames?
If you leave it in the sun, no. But I'm not joking. I have taken, like, if you take a solid rod of celluloid, completely solid, you know what I mean? And you take a match to it, it might take off a little bit, but it's when it's in wispy form that it's more dangerous. And like a film form, like literally like
really,
you know,
thin,
like film from the movie Inglourious Basterds. That's when it gets a lot more volatile. Now I have done this before. It all depends on airflow. Is what I've found is that, like, I have done this. You call me a firebug, but sometimes I play with celluloid and light it on fire. But if you take a solid rod, you might catch the corner, you know, and I've never taken it to a pen because that's just silly. I would never do that. But if it's...
Sounds like a cool YouTube video to me. I don't know.
It could be. But I did take once a piece of celluloid where the center had been hollowed out, and it came up pretty quick.
Wow.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, don't get an open flame near your celluloid pens. Well, don't get an open flame near any pen.
Yeah.
But especially celluloid will probably take off if you know, under the right circumstances.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. All right, so I think we've covered most of that. Okay, so I got another question here. I'm not actually going to kind of take the end of the question and tack it on here.
Okay.
So let's see here. So he said, just for fun, how about an end-of-day color option? So he said, in the pocket knife world, that's when the leftover celluloids or plastics would be mixed together and unique colors and patterns would be born. So shavings, little knockoff pieces, whatever.
Yeah. Actually,
put into some custom.
That's not just a thing that happens in the knife industry. That happened with vintage pen companies too. They would take their celluloid shavings, they would put it into a mold, fill it with acetone or, you know, some other solvent that would literally melt it, and then that all forms into a new pen blank, if you will, once that acetone evaporates and once it's gone. You know, we don't get involved in manufacturing our own acrylics. Even if I had like huge handfuls of celluloid, I might prefer to burn it anyways. No, I'm kidding.
Especially after hearing how expensive it is.
Yeah,
you're literally lighting money on
everyone's
fire.
Gonna think I'm a firebug now.
Yeah, you're like lighting cigars with celluloid pens.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm envisioning. Fat Cat Brian Gray.
There you go.
Lighting up pens with his cigars. Yeah.
So, anyways, you can do that. Like if somebody has a handful of celluloid shavings, you can put it into a mold or a tube and pour acetone or lacquer thinner or a heavy solvent in there, and it will melt it and then turn it into a blank once everything hardens and once it evaporates. But we don't get involved. I mean, first of all, even if I had this, well, like I said, if I had the shavings, I'd burn it. But no, we don't get involved with manufacturing acrylics. We're busy enough machining them that we don't get involved with making them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever? This is completely not related to the question at all. But did you ever mess around with that back when you were doing like their pen turning kind of stuff?
Well, here's the
casting
thing,
resins and that kind of stuff.
Things may have changed, but there are plenty of people that are home brewing polyester resins.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's also called Alumilite and polyester resin.
That's one of them, yeah.
Now, I shouldn't speak as an authority because I'm not. I haven't played with them for probably 4 or 5 years. But back when I would get samples of those and people would want me to make a pen from that, at least the early polyester resins would not hold threads. They were too brittle. They were great for kit pens because you don't take the piece and cut delicate threads into it. There's no threads. You just make a barrel that's just smooth and no precision. I shouldn't say that. No precision threads. No precision cuts that require threads or delicate spots. You know, it's covered on both ends by the components which protects it. So a more brittle piece will lend itself to a kit pen, but it won't lend itself to our designs. Literally, I remember someone sent me a piece of polyester resin or Alumilite or whatever they're calling it 4 or 5 years ago, and I made a pen from it, and then I just pulled the cap off, and the threads just sheared. Yeah. So for our applications, no. Yeah. And that's the only really way of making acrylics today that I would know of. Is just, you know, those homebrew poly resins. They're beautiful. They look great, but I haven't found some that really work for our designs where I feel like I could give our lifetime promise on our pens to, because, you know, when we're cutting threads and they crumble as they cut, I can't use it. Yeah,
I'm with you. Yeah, I remember messing around with some of those materials. I did some Alumilite casting. I did some worthless wood casting. So you basically take like chunks of burlwood or eucalyptus root or something like that, where it's like this gnarled up thing with holes in it and you can't actually turn anything out of it. So you like put it into this paint, like homemade paint pressure pot, and then you take this resin, you put all kinds of crazy dyes and stuff in there. And then the
resin fills all the cracks.
Yeah, you like pressure, you put it under pressure and it injects that resin and then it hardens under pressure. And then you can turn it into something. But it's like you mentioned, like it's too soft, you can't use it for that kind of stuff.
It was back then. Now I do see other pen makers using it in designs like mine, and maybe I should revisit those. I don't know. But at this point we're not using them. If somebody wants to send me a recent sample, I'll be happy to test it. But whenever I did test it out, it wasn't really up to our standards for what we would want in a pen material.
And I was messing around. This was like 2008, 2009 that I was messing with this stuff. So
back when you were 22 or 21?
Yeah, something like that. How
14? 14?
Come on now, give me a little credit here, but no,
hey, you tease me
so-
about being in my 40s. Come on, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, so that's really cool. So getting back to the original question here, how about a flex nib option?
Well, we have that.
You have a flex nib?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
We actually, I approached Richard Binder about 2 years ago because he was making tremendous flex nibs that I was really, really impressed with, and he was doing it different than anybody else. I don't want to get too descriptive, but he was shaping the nib different, he was thinning the nib different, he was treating the feed different, and as soon as I tried one, I kind of bugged him until he was like, okay, you can sell them. So we do offer flex nibs from Richard Binder. Now we do get questions because Richard Binder's retired. What's he doing? Well, I won't speak for Richard, but my understanding is that I don't know that he'll ever fully retire, quite honestly. I think that he enjoys it too much, and I think he's working more excuse me, on his own terms now and kind of doing what he wants to do rather than having the demands of running the business. Part of that is still flex nibs, and I don't know that there's any time soon that he'll be stopping that. At least he has given us no indication. So we do offer Richard Binder flex nibs. If you go to our website under pens and then under customized fountain nibs, you'll see those flex nibs, and they are. I mean, obviously, I'm not trying to oversell them. They're the best flex nibs in a modern pen that I've ever used. They're just, Richard does such amazing work, and I'm honored that he's allowing us to put them on our pens. Yeah.
And how much are you paying for one of these?
They're not
nibs?
they're not cheap. I mean, the nib itself is going to add 100 to a typical pen. So let's say a converter filling pen is going to be $350 with the 14K nib, and then Richard's labor will add anywhere from $100 to $165 depending upon the tip size. So you're talking minimum $450 in that range, going up to $515 if my math is correct. Now there is another option. If you wanted to buy a production line pen from someone like this guy or one of our other retailers, of course, then you can buy an individual flex nib from Richard, and then you can have, you can install it yourself. And it's not that difficult. The nib is delicate, so use care. It's not a steel nib that you can, it's a very, very delicate nib. Just use care installing it. But if you go that route, then you could get set up with a $150 pen, buy the nib, from Richard, which would probably be between $200 and $250. Don't quote me. And then you've got a less expensive option for a good modern flex nib.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that is one question we get asked about a lot. It's like, why don't fountain pen companies make flex nibs like they used to back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever?
Honestly, it's supply and demand, and it's I would say supply and demand. It's demand, and it's also, they would have to, literally, the machines that make nibs are very, very expensive. And they run the same machine over and over and over and over, and the bane of their existence is based on those machines. So they're really expensive. They stamp the nibs. If you made a nib that was modern flex, you would have to alter the thickness of the nib. Modern gold and steel nibs, generally speaking, are all one uniform thickness from front to back. Okay? A flex nib needs to have a varying thickness. It needs to be thicker in the back and then thinner towards the front, and then there might even be some tempering going on that has to happen. I'm not positive on that. But the bottom line is that, the nib companies like Jovo and Bach, they look at the market and they see a very, very, although we all love flex pens, how many of us really, first of all, they see inexpensive alternatives like dip nibs, like noodlers. They see the fact that people like Richard Binder and John Modishaw are making them anyways. So, the market is kind of fulfilled right now, and then if that doesn't work, then you can always find a great vintage pen as well that would have good flex. So I don't think the nib companies have any motivation really to get too involved with that, because the investment in the tooling to do it right would never make up the sales that they would need to pay for that tool.
Yeah, basically, like you said, the economics of it would be such that in order to make back that investment, they would have to charge such a high amount, you might as well get something custom made.
And maybe they would charge the same as what you would pay getting Richard Binder to slave away to, alter it perfectly for you.
Because again, like in the 20s and 30s, it was fountain pens or typewriters basically. Like those were your only options. So everybody wrote with pens. So those who wanted a flex nib, your demand portion of the market was was huge
And I also,
in comparison to there's probably more people then that wanted a flex nib than there are all people that use fountain pens today.
I also think that in that during, and post-Depression era, kind of like, when flex nibs were probably a bit more prominent, people wrote Spencerian. People wrote more decorative, they wanted that flex. Now, people today, the general public anyways, most would not know what a flex nib is.
Yeah, they don't even know what you're talking about.
And even fountain pen fans, how many really, of course there's plenty out there, and I see beautiful flex work all the time, and I love it. But what is the percentage of that market for real? You know what I mean?
Like who are going to use it on a daily basis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what companies like Yovo and Bach look at, and they say, why on earth would we do that? It'd be great to have it, but, that wouldn't make very good business sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can get great flex nibs. The dip nibs are great. Browse and what else? You probably know better than I.
Got a Zebra G. I hear people
Zebra G.
adapting those and putting those on their pens.
And then Noodlers has their version.
There's several others, like Pilot's got the soft Falcon, the Demiki Falcon, Pilot Falcon. Omos has got a really good soft nib.
Not only that, also, if you look at the guys like Michael Saul that really do amazing copperplate, they need the oblique holder anyways.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a big part of it. I'm not an expert on copperplate or, that type of decorative writing, or Spencerian, I should say. But I don't know that Michael Saul would grab an Edison pen with a Richard Binder flex nib and like it the same way that he would his dip nib that has the oblique holder.
It's actually interesting you brought this up because, we've talked about Periscope. You're on Periscope now, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, gosh, as we're talking about flex nibs, like, we need to be Periscoping this. But Lee Rays just did a Periscope the other day and talked about flex pens. And she talked about how she does that amazing calligraphy stuff, and her stuff is just mind blowing.
If you guys have not seen,
if you've ever seen any of her stuff,
Leighpod, and I believe that's her YouTube channel. Please check out her YouTube channel. It is so stunning. She holds the camera in one hand and then does the flex work in the other hand, and she'll put water on the paper too, so that when she touches this area, the ink spills into that little pattern of the water. It's stunning. Cool. It's so stunning. It's
really cool stuff.
It takes handwriting to like a new plane of art. It's really beautiful.
And what she was explaining to me, and like, see, this is what's so cool, is like now we can all talk about this kind of stuff and share it. Like, she lives in the Philippines, but she was broadcasting this at like 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and it's like 9 o'clock at night where I am, and I'm like, oh, sweet. So we're literally like, I'm in the chat, she's broadcasting this to everybody, and she's explaining this. I'm like, I'm learning stuff here.
Yeah.
She was explaining, if you really want to do calligraphy, like the real Spencerian type stuff, you need an oblique, because if you're writing for any extensive period of time, which you are, because writing that really fancy stuff takes forever, you need an oblique holder, because the fountain pen in your hand normally, to get that kind of flex, is very fatiguing with your hand. So that's why they do the offset nibs, is because you get that pressure, the flex pressure, without like screwing up your wrist, basically.
That's great to know.
So, if you're writing more than just a little bit with a flex pen, trying to do the Spencerian type stuff, she was like, yeah, I love flex pens and all that, but she's like, that's why you go with the offset nibs and the dip and all that kind of stuff. So that's, if you really want to get into that, you really kind of get away from a fountain pen anyway. And
as much as I would love to sell lots of Richard Binder flex nibs, I have to admit, the way to get into flex is to start with a dip nib, because they react wonderfully. The Noodler's pens are fine.
Cheap too, like they're super cheap.
Exactly.
A couple of dollars, really.
Yeah, for you to get started with like Spencerian type script or something more decorative, start there and then see if you like it before going to a $400 Edison. I'll be the first. I love selling them, but I also can't in good conscience recommend that a beginner who's just now doing flex start with our pens. It's probably not. I'll be the first to admit that. Start with our production line, and that'll get you addicted, and then you can move up to our signature line from there. And then we'll talk flex nibs.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. Very cool. So 2 people telling you not to buy our products that you really want to do flex. So yeah, I gotta say that's really good business sense there. I gotta say we're being honest.
Seriously though,
this is what it is.
That's an approach that you and I both take, I think, and a lot of times. There was a guy the other day who sent me an email, and he said, boy, I really love this pen, I'd like to get it. And I said, I'll tell you what though, if you buy the production line version and then get this from Richard, you're going to get it much cheaper. And he's like, man, you know what? You kind of aced yourself out of a sale, but long term I respect you and I'm going to come back. So at least I think that we both share those qualities as businessmen, and that, I think that I'm much more interested in long term loyalty of customers than just
Exactly.
getting that one sale. That's not, you know,
Exactly.
that's not what's important to
Well,
us.
and like we're proving that right now. Like neither of us is getting paid to sit here and shoot this video. Like this is long-term
I was
investment
expecting
right
something
here.
from you. No, I'm kidding.
Well, we are buying you lunch.
Oh, dang.
We're buying you lunch, so
That'll
there
work.
you go.
That'll work.
I won't even pay for your gas coming down here, but we'll buy you a Chipotle, lunch. But you know, so that is kind of cool. So
Yeah.
all right, I think we are really good at filling time here. So. I need to see how much like memory we have left on the card. Okay, we're good. We got 38 minutes left on the card, so
All
we're
right,
good, right?
we're
We're
good,
good.
we're
We can go
good.
straight up to lunchtime. Cool. All right, let's see here. All right, this is a good one. This is from Forgiven Vitiaz on Twitter. Does Brian like Brian, or Brian thinks Brian is better than Brian?
Wait a minute. Does Brian like Brian?
Does Brian like Brian?
Or does Brian
think
think Brian is better than Brian?
We can take this question a lot of ways. I think what they're getting at is, why is like everybody in the fountain pen world named Brian?
That's true. There's Brian Gray. There's Brian Goulet. There's
Goulet,
Brian
thank you for
Anderson.
including
Yeah,
that,
thank you.
yeah.
There's Brian Anderson. There's Bryant Greer.
Brian
There's
Greer, not
Bryant,
exactly, but close.
Yeah, yep.
There's Brian Green,
Brian
also Supply
Green.
Geek.
There's another one that I'm missing. Am I forgetting someone, Andrea?
Somebody else.
There's someone
you're
else
forgetting.
that I'm gonna feel horrible.
You really should.
I
Feel
know.
horrible right now.
I said Brian Anderson.
Yeah. Everybody watching this is like
I know.
screaming it right
Yeah.
now. We can't remember. Put it in the
Put in the comments because I'm
Put in
gonna
the
feel
comments.
horrible for forgetting.
Yeah.
But
But there's a lot of Brians, right?
yeah.
So we're gonna reveal something here that we've never revealed before. Our birth names are not actually Brian. We
Seymour.
changed them.
Seymour, and what's yours?
Yeah. Mine would. Spartacus is my first name. That's actually my God-given name.
Yeah.
We changed it to
Wait,
Brian when we
Can
got
I
into
change
the
mine
fountain
from
pen
Seymour?
world.
I don't like Seymour now.
Well, that's your middle name, so tell me your
That's
first
right.
name. What's your first name?
Aloysius.
Aloysius. Aloysius Gray and Spartacus Goulet. Those are actually, I don't know why that came to mind, but no, we're actually both Brian. It's just sheer coincidence. I have no idea why. And the funny thing is, like, I don't know a single person in my personal life named Brian. Like, I really don't. There are no Brians, like, anywhere near me. None in my family, like, nowhere else. Like, my family came from up north, which I guess, like, like New England area. So, like, Brian is, I guess, a more common name up there of sorts. I knew, like, one Brian growing up, maybe.
This is going to go way back on you, of course. Who were you named after, or do you know that, or did they just come up with
I wasn't
Brian?
named after anyone significant. My parents just kind of liked the name. Like, my mom knew a Brian from school.
My parents...
She kind of liked, you know, it was kind of a popular, like, mid-'80s name, I guess. Not that you would know anything about that, but...
Mid-'80s?
You know,
should have seen what I wore in the
you were there.
mid-'80s.
I would love to see that.
I'll see
I
if I
would
can
love
find
to see
some.
it. How
yeah.
old were you in 1984? Well, you would have been like, what, 11?
84, I would have been... I was born in 72, so that would have been 12.
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy, I bet you looked good.
Parachute
12
pants?
years old.
Anyways,
Oh my gosh.
my parents, my mom was pregnant, and they went to see that movie Brian's Song, which is like a real tragic movie about Brian
Okay.
Piccolo. So that's where Brian came from. Somehow they just thought about that. I wasn't named after Brian Piccolo, but they got the
I was
idea.
going to say,
from,
this kid is tragic. We're going to name him Brian.
Exactly. And he dies from cancer in the movie, doesn't it? I think in the I don't know what he
I
dies
wasn't
from.
born yet. I don't know.
It's a very sad story about a football player who has a life debilitating disease, and it's like, that's a great name for our son. We should.
That's really good, yeah. We want to remember this horrible tragedy every time we look at our son. Every time we yell at our son
Who
for
says
not,
they don't?
for not putting his- Wow. Good stuff. All right, let's see here. We got a question from Pen Hall on Twitter. Whose first handmade pen was better? And does Brian Gray still have his first pen?
I'm sure I don't have the first pen that I ever made because I probably...
We're talking like hand-turning pen
Yes,
now. Yeah.
yes. I really, really doubt that I have the first pen that I made ever because I probably had no idea that this would be something that would maybe a memento, you know what I mean? Just, you know, I have no... But I do have like early pens that I made, and actually it's my parents probably have the most extensive Edison collection that there is of like special Edison, first editions, artist proofs. Whenever we introduce a new pen, whenever we get out an artist proof, whenever we have something special, I always send one to my parents. and they have a cabinet kind of like yours here, not quite that big, but they do have a cabinet full of all of those special pens.
That's really cool.
And one of the first pens that I was most proud of, like one pen that I made very, very early on that I was proud of, and I was like, hey, that's a decent looking pen. They have that.
Cool.
So yeah, and that reminds me, Andrea, we need to send them a couple. We haven't sent them anything for like about 4 or 5 months. So, but usually if there's a limited edition pen, we'll send the artist proof.
How many
to them.
pens have they got now, if you had to guess?
How many do they have?
Yeah.
Probably in the range of 40, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe not the most extensive collection, but the most extensive collection of special Edisons that mean a lot to me. You know what I mean?
I think people would love to see that. I'm just going to put pressure
That's
on
a
you.
good idea.
That would be really cool to share.
Maybe I should ask my parents to bring it up. Actually, when we go back, my parents are watching our 10-year-old right now while we're at the show, and they're going to meet us at our house once we get back up there.
Andrew's 10 now? Holy cow.
Well, he will be 10. Actually, as soon as we finish DC, we have like 50 people coming over for the weekend for a party. So it's like as if the DC Pen Show doesn't keep us busy enough and stressed enough.
Why not have 50 people over as soon as you get back when
Yeah.
you're all tired from a 10-hour drive?
Yep.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Wow.
I'll have a couple of beers. That'll get me
there
through
you
it though.
After the drive.
After the drive is done. Of course.
Well, that's really cool. Oh man,
Yeah.
that would be really
Now
good
your
to
first
see.
pen.
My first pen, I do. Which, as far as which one was better, I mean, we really have no way to prove that, right? Because you don't have your first one.
I just think that mine was. No, I'm just kidding. I have no idea. Yeah,
Well, you are older and you have a lot more experience.
That's
just
true.
in general,
That's
so probably yours. I'll concede to that. I have my first pen.
Yeah.
I just showed it to you like a second ago. It's
Hang on.
over there. I've got it up in the top drawer there on the left side. So it's this this beautiful, it's a ballpoint, just don't judge, okay? I didn't know anything about fountain pens when I first got into it. I don't even know the wood that it's made out of, honestly, because I bought like this mixed bag of random wood chunks
Looks
because
like
it was
walnut,
cheaper. It might be walnut.
Walnut?
I really don't have a clue. I'm sure it's nothing fancy, but it's like it was like a bag of like cutoffs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't match up the cut pieces or anything like that, but it's like it's got this terrible like finish on it. The pieces like the doesn't even mate up properly, and it's like not even sanded well, so you can see like the tooling marks and everything.
You're
but
still better than mine, man.
It's, you know,
I think the first pens
it's recognizable as a pen.
the first pens that I made of this style, I probably had like what most people do and put like a bulge in.
Oh,
here. You know what I mean,
yeah.
I didn't have the guts.
Because you want to be all artistic.
No,
with it, right?
well, I didn't have the guts to make it that straight because I'm sure it would have chipped out and I would have messed it up. So
yeah, exactly.
the answer is Brian's is much better than mine. I can tell right now.
That was on point.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I really do.
That's cool that you still have it
But
too.
you know what's really cool though is like I had the same kind of backstory that you did. Like I completely bought the pen lathe on a whim. I didn't know anything about pens. I definitely didn't know anything about fountain pens. Had no idea that a business could even come out of it. I honestly I was addicted to the New Yankee Workshop.
Yeah.
And I was desperate to make something out of wood. I was envisioning myself as like a Norm Abrams type building like giant antique armoires and stuff. And I was like, well, I live in an apartment, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I have a covered balcony and I can drape extension cords out the window. So Rachel, it'd be a really great idea if I bought this small pen lathe. I had a Grizzly catalog that's like 100,000 pages thick.
Yep.
And I would sit there like on the toilet flipping through my Grizzly catalog, fantasizing about being the next Norm Abrams building furniture on my apartment balcking.
You and I started the exact same way. I mean, seriously, we started the exact same way with kit pens and doing wood and yeah, that's exactly it.
And you know what? Honest to goodness, had he not already been doing this, I probably would have gone the route that
The
you did.
manufacturing route?
Yeah, because you get the kit pen thing, and then you get into like, you know, I got into like more like the crazy finishes and the wood casting and all that kind of stuff. And I knew the limitations of kit pens, and I wanted to get into other stuff. But no joke, you were like a few years ahead of me, and I looked and I was like, I don't want to try to follow up this guy. You know what I mean? Because like you were already pretty much killing it at that point.
How flattering.
You know? Yeah, you should be flattered. You should be flattered.
That sounded joking, but I really wasn't.
No, it's true. I really
think-
looked up to Brian in those early days, and I just a little background about me. I am not the competitive type. I didn't grow up with like competitive sports. I was always like, oh, they're better at that than me. Let me find out something else that nobody's doing, and just then I'll be the best because I'm the only one doing it.
Sure.
And like that's hence the Goulet Pen Company. Like that's where we came from. You know, nobody's shooting pen videos, so let me fumble around and figure it out, and I'll be the best because I'm like the only one. And then I figured it out after a while. But, you know, so had you not been there, I may have been the Brian Gray
Goulet
of
pen.
the.
Well, I
Yeah.
was gonna say the Goulet Pen Company. Wait, that exists though.
Yeah, of course.
What
I don't
name
know.
it something different?
I'm from Richmond, so like I'm trying to think of like what celebrity came from Richmond. Like Edgar Allan Poe lived here for a while, like the Poe Pen Company or something. Maybe I don't know. That's kind of depressing though.
Yeah.
You know. I watched the drunk.
That's a euphemism.
I watched the Drunk History of Edgar Allan Poe. Have you ever seen that show, Drunk History?
I don't think so. Yeah. I know what you're talking about, but not that episode.
Yeah. They have an Edgar Allan Poe one. It's kind of ridiculous, that story.
Yeah, but isn't Poe outside of the author? Poe is like a euphemism for poor. So this is the Poe Pen Company. You know.
The Poe Pen Company. Yeah. Not quite the same. Not quite the same feel as Edison. And I don't know would it be like a little raven on the nib or something. I don't know.
There you
got
go.
the cool like light bulb thing. Anyway, yeah. So that answers that question. If we throw enough words at it, I'm sure we'll answer the question at some point. All right. So this one is from Simon Rawl Andrew on Twitter. Brian Gray, which fountain pen that Brian has,
that Brian Goulet
has non-Edison, is your favorite?
So which pen that you
basically
have?
because I don't have everything, but I've got a lot. So let's just open it up a little bit because you don't know everything that I specifically have. But like, what non-Edison pen is your favorite? Let's just go with that.
My own personal collection or in general?
Take it whichever way you want.
My own personal collection, I think that my favorite pen is a 2007 Bexley Owners Club. First of all, it's an awesome pen. It's the one that's shaped like bamboo and it has the gold rings going all the way through it. But it also has a little bit more meaning to me as well. When I started the Edison Pen Company, Howard Levy with the Bexley Pen Company was always wide open with information to me. And he still is. He's a wonderful guy. I owe him a lot, quite honestly. So I remember I was able to trade someone for that pen. And first of all, it's beautiful. It's well designed. It's stunning. I love it. And it also has a little bit of meaning to me because, I mean, I'm sure I would have succeeded, you know, without Howard's help. But he just, you know, sometimes he would give me information that I'm like, you know, this is almost, it's interesting because he has an attitude that I subscribe to as well. And that if you help other pen makers, it just grows the market for all of us. Sure. Some people would take the attitude of, I'm not going to show you anything about making pens
this is proprietary. This is my process.
Well, or maybe I don't want to help someone compete with me. You know what I mean? But the bottom line is, you know, in my opinion anyways, like the same thing with, a lot of you may know Sean Newton. Sean Newton is probably just like maybe 5 or 6 years behind where I am now, and he's taken off. You know, I mean, where I started.
So I should go talk to Sean Newton about
if you'd
a Goulet
like,
exclusive. Right? If we're staying 4 or 5 years, let me reach out.
But anyways, Sean's a great guy, and we get along wonderfully. We'll see him at the DC Pen Show tomorrow. And I've given him a lot of pointers the same way that Howard gave me pointers. So that pen has a lot of meaning to me, not just because it's a great pen, but it's like, you know, I like that guy, and this is something that he made, and I really appreciate it. So that's kind of cool. Outside of that, I don't own one, and I was really mad when I sold it. But those Pilot MYUs that have the integrated nib, do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a very, very slick, sleek metal pen. The nib is integral to the body, and you pop it off, and it's so short that you have to post it. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. I love those. I think those are just engineering, I don't want to say marvels, because like a snorkel is an engineering marvel. But I think that those are really, really cool. And I had one, and I sold it, and I'm kind of heartbroken by that. I just think those are really unique. They're slick. Fountain pens need to qualify for like an aesthetic appeal to me, and they do. The shape of the nib, the way, you know, a nib is just graceful, period. But that pen in itself, I think that they just nailed aesthetics with that pen, and I love that. And I'm sick that I sold it, but.
I mean, can you find those anymore? Like eBay?
The vintage.
I mean, you go to pen shows and stuff all the time.
Well, first of all, you probably find one at the DC show for sure, MYUs. But I also think that the more modern ones were called like the M90 or something 90. I'm going off of memory here. I'm not always an expert in vintage or in other words. But the Pilot MYUs, and I think the more modern versions were called M90s. I think. and it was like a limited edition for a while. I don't know if they still sell them. Well, you carry Pilot, right?
Oh, they don't sell them. No.
They don't sell
them? Not in the U.S. anyway. I've
Yeah.
never heard really anybody talk about them.
Yeah. Well, if you can find one, or Google it, take a look at it. It's just like, in my opinion, aesthetics like to the nth degree in a pen. It's really
Brian
cool.
might trade you a nice Edison pen.
If anybody has a Pilot
NYU
NYU and you want to trade for an Edison pump filler, send me an email. I would
We'll
definitely
make you a
talk
nice
about
celluloid, scrap celluloid pump filler. There you go. I love just committing you to all kinds of stuff here. This is great. This is great. I should do more joint videos like this. Okay, cool. Okay, this is actually the last question.
Last question.
Here. So, we've got, let's see here, 24 minutes left on the card, so we can ramble a bit.
Mm-hmm.
We can ramble. But will there be another Edison collaboration with Ernest Shin? So you might have to give some background here, because I don't know that my audience is going to really know who Ernest Shin is and what the heck people are talking about. So
Ernest Shin is a phenomenal Urushi artist in New Jersey. Probably, as far as I know, the only Urushi artist in North America working on pens. I think that there was a guy maybe up in Canada, but I don't know what that story is now. I'm not going to say for sure he's the only, but he's one of the only Urushi artists in North America.
He's the only that you know of, at least.
Yeah. And we work with him. If you go to our website, you'll see the production line, you'll see the signature line, and you'll see the Urushi line. And the Urushi line is basically a collaboration between Ernest and myself. Ernest and myself.
Yes.
And so we, people will go to Ernest, say, I want pearl in this finish and this Urushi and this da-da-da-da, and then we build the pen, we send it to him with basically a rough, a rough finish on it, and then he does the Urushi work from there. He does astonishing work. It's really great. You may have seen that we did a limited edition pearl, we did a limited edition Mina, we did a limited edition Herald, and they were all outstanding.
Yeah.
So I
remember seeing some of these because you had them at the DC shows.
And actually,
Ernest was at the DC show.
Those are
a couple of years ago.
Those are in my collection that my parents have. That's part of the pens that are in my parents' collection.
That's cool.
Yeah, they're astounding.
That's cool. You gotta get pictures of these things at least. Yeah.
So the answer is yes. We will be doing another. Now, first of all, everybody should know. You can't now. I think that Ernest might be taking a little bit of a break right now to get caught up on his current backlog, because if you know much about Urushi, it can be literally a 6-month to year-and-a-half process to make a Urushi pen, to do the lacquer work. It's a long process.
To make one pen.
To make one. Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Or can you make it in batches? What is Urushi like? I don't even know that most people know.
Urushi is
really
essentially like a multi-layered lacquer. It's a Japanese art form, and maybe I shouldn't speak authoritatively because I'm not an expert on this, but if Ernest is going to do a pen in like a simple Urushi lacquer, it's going to be 9 coats, if not more, and each one takes a very long time to cure. If it's going to be more like a, I can't think of the term right now, with the gold infill in it, not maquille, but like the one that we did for the limited edition Pearl, then he's going to layer gold into it and then sand, and then put more lacquer on top of the gold, and then sand back those layers to reveal these interesting bumps and valleys.
Oh, it looks
it's
just
unbelievable.
Yeah, and you can't replicate that with anything else.
Yeah, I don't know how to, but that's also why like the Urushi Pearl, I believe, was in the ballpark of like $950 or $1,000. The Herald was in the same ballpark, and then the Mina was a little touch less. But
which honestly
it's a lot
is
of work.
A bargain.
Considering the work
you
involved,
get into like Nikaya and I'm trying to think who else does Urushi specific. There's a lot of companies that do maquille.
Yeah.
And this is my knowledge even starts to break down a little bit here, talking about maquille versus Urushi. I'm not familiar necessarily.
And I'm not an expert either.
Yeah.
I just love them, and when Ernest works with us, I'm just grateful that he does.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like from what I understand, it can be like 40, 50 layers of lacquer on some of these, Urushi types and stuff, and it's an unbelievably hard lacquer as well that I know, and I think it's pretty toxic too. Like it's kind of a natural lacquer or something like that, or some of them can be not toxic once they're cured, but like in the process of working with them can be toxic, so you have to really know what you're doing.
There are some people that are allergic to it, and I believe it comes from a tree. Maybe it's like I don't remember. I honestly, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to say that I know for sure. But there are people that have like an allergic reaction to it.
Urushiol or something
there you
like
go.
that.
That rings a bell.
And I remember that because we're going to really throw back now. When I first got into pen turning, it's a very similar kind of thing that's in a lot of rosewood, rosewoods like tulip wood and cocobolo and stuff like that. And it's the same kind of thing as what's in poison ivy.
I gotcha.
So like when I turned my first batch of pens out of tulip wood, it was like 40 different pens I had to make out of tulip wood. I didn't have a good dust collection system.
Oh, wow.
So the dust got all over my arms, and I broke out in a terrible poison ivy rash after like 6 hours of working with it.
It does have issues, and people can have rashes. However, most people that might have a reaction, once the pen is completely cured, then that goes away.
Right.
But there is my understanding, talking to Ernest, there is a very small percentage of the population that even after it cures, they can't have Urushi pens because they'll...
I imagine if you're like highly allergic to like poison ivy type stuff, it's like a very similar kind of thing maybe. I don't know, we're not doctors or scientists or everything. I mean, you used to be a drug pusher, so I don't know what you know about that. Did Merck make anything for,
nope.
Urushi?
Osteoporosis was what I dealt with.
Oh, well, maybe not so much. But,
So anyways, I haven't given the answer to the question. There is a new... Now, of course...
We're killing time here. We're killing time.
You can always commission a pen, although right now the order might be put on hold because I think that Ernest is trying to get all caught up with his stuff. Ernest does not do this full time. It's more like, his evenings, and so he does have a real job, if you will, that he needs to take care of. So there is a pen that's in the works as a limited edition, and it's been in the works for probably 2 years now. So you can imagine how special this might be. So we're hoping to have it launched by the end of this year. But the same way that I said the new production line pen will be out early 2015.
Right.
I don't hold me to that. If you want to email me, and I can give you whatever updates we have when I have them. But right now we're shooting for the end of this year, before the end of the year, to have this new Urushi collaboration with Ernest, and it should be. It should put the other three. Like, it should be a level above the other three from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, because it's true craftsmanship, right? Like, he's getting better all the time.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
And he's a young guy, too, like, right?
Yeah, he's younger than you.
Younger than me.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
I think he's probably 24, 25, maybe 26 at this point.
Wow.
Yeah. And interesting thing about Ernest also is that basically he is actually, I believe, Korean, does not speak any Japanese. He learned Japanese to start reading Urushi textbooks and how to do it. You know what I mean? Which is just amazing for me.
Yeah, because this isn't something you can get like on an ebook or something like that. You know, you're talking like 100, 200-year-old texts written only in Japanese.
And all this talk about Ernest, of course, you can go to edisonpen.com and look at the Urushi line, but we should also definitely give Ernest a plug. Hakumin Urushi, Hakumin, is the name of his business, and hakuminurushi.com. Is his web address. Go look at his stuff. It's just stunning. And there's no one else. I mean, I think he's the only in North America.
You better shoot him an email and give him a heads up that we're talking about him on here.
Yeah, he's going to get all kinds of hits on his website.
He's not going to know what people. He's going to go, what happened?
I'm next to positive he's the only North American Urushi artist working on pens. I can tell you this, he's definitely the best. How's that? And I'm just honored that we're coupled up together and working together with him. Yeah.
If he does decide to go full time, let me know. Maybe him and I can do
you have a cubicle that you can devote to Ernest in here? Yeah.
There we go. That sounds good. Sounds good. Cool. All right. Well, that's all the questions that we have for this broadcast. What do you think doing a Q&A like this?
It's awesome. You know what? Cool? And this is the kind of thing that maybe we should do at our own facility too. You are the master of social media, and I'm your Padawan trying to do as much social media as you do.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I followed up on you a little bit because you started doing like Ustream broadcasts.
That's right. Yeah.
Before I really got into.
I was ahead of you at one point, and then you just like took it to the moon, man.
Well, you're focused on your lathe all the time.
Well,
I'm out there looking around.
Honestly, part of maybe we should hire someone else so that I can have more time to devote to social media. I mean, of course, I do video blogs, but geez, you guys are doing something every day, which is wonderful. It really is great. And maybe we should focus more on that too. Periscope is very helpful though. Because
Periscope is cool.
That really doesn't take time out of my schedule. I don't have to set up lighting. I don't have to render video. I don't have to edit it. I don't have to get it up on YouTube. It's just there. Periscope is great. And if you guys haven't seen our broadcast, make sure to check us out. We've done maybe 5 or 6 so far in the last 2 weeks, and we love it. So I don't
It's a lot
see
of
us
fun.
doing less Periscope. It's great.
It's a lot of fun.
Yep.
And it kind of throws back to like the Ustream, type. You get a little chat in there.
Sure.
I mean, some of the people watching probably know about Periscope.
I hope so.
Sure.
Yeah. And if not, it's taking off. This was a social media outlet that I was not even aware of until about 4 weeks ago when you told me about it. And I said, well, hey, the Goulets are always way on top of this. I better check this out. And I was broadcasting that night, so.
That's right.
Not that night, but like the next day.
No, I was like, hey, this thing is really cool. Next, I was like, join it. Watch the next one that I do. You're gonna be hooked immediately.
Yeah.
And then it was like 12 hours later. You were started doing them yourself.
And then of course you gave us this is the social media power of this guy. He gave us like one plug on his Periscope, and it's like, I got, how many followers did I just get? It's like, I think we have close to 300 now, but I went from like 50 to like 200 after you said one thing about us.
Hey.
Yeah.
If you got a Brian in your name, somebody's gonna follow you in the pen world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're gonna have like more followers than Katy Perry soon.
I don't know about that.
Yeah,
I don't know about that. But it still is a lot of fun. So we got to do some Periscope. We haven't Periscoped anything yet as of recording this.
We will though. I mean,
we
by
will,
the time
I
you
promise.
watch this on YouTube, we probably would have already done some Periscope, of course, right?
We will have.
Yep.
Yeah, we
Great.
darn well better have
Yeah.
anyway. So the way we always like to close it out is we like to leave it with a question of the week.
Okay.
So this is a question for you guys to answer in the chat, and this is going to be a little bit of a plug here for Edison for coming all the way down here and doing this special broadcast. So the question of the week is, if Brian Gray were to build you a free custom Edison pen, he's not going to, but if he was, just dream a little bit, right?
Well, we've done that before when we do contests. We've done some things, giveaways and that. So, and
Do you want to? Did you really? We didn't even talk about this.
No,
ahead of time. Do you want to crack that door open?
No. I'm saying it's happened.
It's happened.
So I'm not saying we're doing one right now.
No.
We're too
We'll
busy
talk.
with DC.
We got all afternoon to talk.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is this does exist from time to time in the form of a giveaway.
So if this theoretically were to happen and Brian were to build a free custom Edison pen, any option, what option would you choose for your pen? Because that's the whole thing with the signature line, is you could literally build any part and piece that you offer together.
And you know what? I would like to add to this, don't limit this to just what we offer as far as like a pump filler, a pneumatic, whatever. What would your dream be? Sometimes that creative input can really give us a lot.
Fair enough.
Sometimes we have a pen design that we introduced that a fan came to me and said, hey, can you make it like this and make it like this? And then I make it, and I love it so much. I'm like, hey, dude, can we use this?
Yeah.
And I compensate them, of course.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the Collier. The Collier was inspired by a customer.
Really?
It was a custom commission by a customer.
How about
and
that?
I loved it so much. And the same thing with the double-ended pens that we make. That was, I'll give Thomas Hall a plug with Penutopia, I think is his website right now.
Cool.
Yeah, that was actually Thomas Hall's design, and I'm not embarrassed to admit I didn't design the double-ended pen. I didn't design the Collier either.
How about that?
Yeah.
Funny story about the Collier. I'm having flashbacks now because
Yeah.
of the DC show and you. So this is an inside joke. This is for the really loyal people that have stuck through on like an hour and 15 minutes.
I have
into this
no idea
video.
where you're going with this, but I'm gonna like it.
No, remember when you came out with the Collier, we introduced it at the DC show in 2011.
Is that when you attended as a vendor?
No.
No. Okay.
No,
Right,
this
right.
would have been the following year, I think.
Okay.
I'm even breaking down my memory. When did you come out with the Collier? It was like 2011, right?
It was I have no idea.
Gosh,
it's
this
been
is bad. We should know this.
Yeah.
don't forget it was a signature line pen for a while,
Right.
and then it went to the production line. So I'm gonna say maybe 5 years.
I'd say 10 or 11.
Years?
Or, no, 2000.
We haven't been in business that long. Oh, 2000. Okay, I thought she meant 10, 11 years. Yeah.
Maybe it's when you were bringing it to the production line. 'Cause
Probably.
I don't know why I would have plugged your signature thing, but no. So I think when you were bringing it to the production line, so maybe we'll call it 2011. We'll look up after the fact. Everybody's gonna tell us we're wrong in the comments. But when we were shooting the video together at the DC show, we were in the lobby, and I was interviewing you, much like we are now. You know where this is going.
Now, yeah.
Much like we still have the video too. Rachel was holding the video camera, and we were talking, and la da da. Here's the pen, and we were showing it, and being so professional, right? And there are like all these like big soft leather chairs.
This was the best.
In the lobby of the Sheraton Premiere, where it's held up in Tyson's Corner. And I was in like interview mode, so we're like wrapping up the video, kind of doing the outro, and I was like, yeah, we were talking about, oh, we're gonna go to Cheesecake Factory and get this red velvet cheesecake, because that's like me and Andrea's thing. So we are wrapping this up, and somebody sits down in one of these big leather chairs off in the back,
just like 10 feet away from us,
and makes the biggest like fart noise as they're sitting. It's not it's the chair, but it makes this noise, and Brian hears it, and I don't. And Rachel hears it, who's holding the camera. And I'm interviewing Brian, and Brian just starts sitting there going like
I remember
like,
because
glancing and snick. I don't know if you knew where it came from.
I was like looking this way, and as soon as that happened, I went to Rachel, and Rachel starts shaking with the camera. She starts shaking,
and she's literally like collapsing in her chair, and I'm like, what the heck? So I'm like trying to talk, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, what the heck is going on here?
You know what? After this publishes, you'll need to like get a link and put the timestamp on exactly where it happens, because it really is funny, because the camera starts shaking and I just kind of look inquisitively at the camera like, what the hell was that?
And then and it was literally like 5 seconds before we ended the video.
Yeah.
So as soon as we wrap it up, I was like, what happened? Rachel's dying, and you're like you're like kind of wondering what's going on. And
I thought it was you.
No, well, I think Rachel, because she was shooting the camera, she saw like the guy sat down or something.
Yeah.
But like it was hilarious. And then I remember, because after we cut the video together, you told me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I was editing the video together, and I was like, Brian, we have this video here. We have this fart noise. I was like, do you want me to like section the audio out and like bring the fart noise down?
No, I said bring it up.
And you said, yeah, you literally said like crank the fart up. I believe that was your email correspondence with me. Literally the email was crank the fart up.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. So you'll have a very like pronounced like prominent fart sound at the end of that video. We just wanted to see if anybody else would say anything. We had like one person ever comment on it. And we've had to like point it out, but I mean, we'll definitely call up to it now.
Oh.
But I just want you to know that's become like kind of a like phrase around here.
Crank
like,
up the fart.
Yeah, like when we get a lot of orders in, it's a Monday, we're coming off the weekend, whatever, and we really gotta like turn it on. I don't know how it got turned into like working really hard, because it's not really where it came from, but like that's like, especially with Drew, like that's like, yeah, if everybody was there back at that time, it's like, oh yeah, we got a lot of orders, man. We gotta crank up the fart.
That's great.
Then our new people coming in are like, what? And we have to tell the whole story.
We'll use that at our facility too. Jake and Wendy, crank up the fart.
Crank
Although the thing is, you know, at our place, that's just commonplace anyways. So they would probably think that's just normal. Well, we already do. What do you mean?
Exactly. I remember those days. Yeah, we don't do that quite as much anymore. I just have my own office now, so if I fart, I gotta like smell it myself. You know, so I kind of cut that out. You know. Oh, TMI here at the end of the Goulet Q&A, but thanks everybody for watching. This was a special treat.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Brian, appreciate
Andrea,
it.
You
It's
can
always
stay over
a pleasure.
there. Brian committed you to coming, but
yeah. Do you want to come over here? At least get in the camera for a second?
No, she doesn't need to. She's going to be on Periscope.
All right. She'll be on Periscope. All right,
thanks everybody. Have a great week. If you're going to the DC show, make sure to stop by Brian's booth and throw your wallet at him. And just run away with a handful of pens. I'll be there as well. Rachel and I will have our, not this Goulet shirt, but a different one. You know, I didn't want to like have one shirt that I wear.
I'll have an Edison shirt there too. So.
Nice. You're probably going to have a collared shirt.
Probably.
With like a embroidered kind of thing on it,
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right.
We just have like gray shirts that like show pit stains when I'm sweating and stuff like that.
I don't need to buy shirts for as many employees as you, so you know we can. Yeah.
True, very true. But,
cool. Well, hey, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Brian, for having me.
Absolutely,
I really appreciate it.
There
I
you
hope
go.
to see you at the DC Pen show. If not, you know, shoot us an email and we'll correspond. And thank you.
Right on.